I think Trayvon Walker is going to be one of the three best players on the Jaguars team this year, and he ain't going to be number three. I'll tell you why I feel so good about it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Not one lie told. It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Glad to have you here as always, whether you're here on audio or video. That would mean wherever you get your audio podcast or your video podcast, like YouTube. If you go over to YouTube and subscribe to Locked On Jaguars, make sure you hit the like button each and every time you join the show, and then also hit the bell so you receive notifications every time we drop a show. And make sure wherever you get your audio podcast, you tap into that location every day also so you do not miss an episode. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel. That's right. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And shout out to the everydayers for joining us every day. You can be one. All you got to do is join us every day. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you why the proof is in the pudding to back up and support my opinion that Trayvon Walker will be absolutely fabulous this year and will not only be ingrained in your consciousness, but the consciousness around the NFL about exactly how valuable he is to this football team. Making it easier for him is one of the ways it's going to happen. How does that happen? We're going to explain it to you. I think everything Trayvon gets, he has to work so hard for it. And now I believe the scheme is going to allow that hard work to manifest itself and really, really be more rewarded statistically. And we'll get into the reasons why I think that can happen. Starting off, though, I think it's all about Travon Walker and Ryan Nielsen. I look for things in Ryan Nielsen, defensive coordinator, obviously was the defensive coordinator in Atlanta, was the defensive line coach in New Orleans for years before that, and has a pretty good track record of working with certain type of players. And I've mentioned in the past a couple of players that I really, really thought kind of played like Trayvon, that kind of have a little bit of the same skill set that he does. And they're very, very prevalent players around the league. And they're not the guys that those little quick, edgy guys that you're talking about. No, it's more of a power player that has the ability to also play on the edge and be able to affect the quarterback. I just think there are certain people that have a certain giddy up about them, and they have a certain way of going about their business. One of them is Trey Hendrickson, who also played in New Orleans for years, where he played 4 seasons, 2017 to 2021. I just think Trey Hendrickson is a real good player. He's a really, really good player who doesn't really get the due that is deserving of it. And I'm going to tell you who impacted him a lot, and that was Ryan Nielsen, right? Ryan Nielsen really, really impacted him a ton. The guy has almost, 26 sacks, 25 and a half sacks over the last 2 years. He's 6'4", 270 pounds. So you kind of see exactly where I'm going with that, because he's a power player who plays the run, but he also plays the pass very well, and he really does get after it. I think a little bit of a bigger name is Cameron Jordan out in New Orleans. I think Cameron Jordan is the absolute truth. Cameron Jordan's going to the Hall of Fame. He's 35 years old. He's got like 117 sacks, man. 117 and a half sacks. And slowed down a little bit. He's 6'4", 287. So you get 6'4", 287, and you get 6'4", 270. How about if I told you Trayvon was a little bit taller and right smack in the middle of them weight-wise? I think he's like 270, maybe a little bit more than 272, maybe about 275. Same body type, longer arms, a little bit taller, but the profile for Trayvon Walker is that of a power player with pass rush ability. He does a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to show you something real quick here, what if you're watching on YouTube, my screen, not my spleen, I'm not going to hurt myself, but my screen is going to split up a little bit. And you'll see a graphic that I'll put up on the screen that talks about some of the things that I'm mentioning. This is a quote from Cameron Jordan. This has happened when Ryan Nielsen got the job in Atlanta. Quote unquote, top tier D-line coach in terms of developing pass rush and emphasizing technique on run and gap integrity. End quote. That is Cameron Jordan speaking on Jaguars defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen, but he was speaking back when Ryan Nielsen was actually the defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. But it still applies today. And the reason why it applies to me is because that's exactly what I expect him to help Trayvon with. I expect the gap integrity and all that. Trayvon told me last year, if you guys remember when I asked him if he'd ever break scheme in order to get numbers, he says, I'll never break the scheme. So you're talking about a disciplined football player. You're talking about a dude that's going to do whatever it takes, even if it's not all shiny and pretty. On the statistics sheet, other coaches know it. And that's the one thing about being around coaches and listening to coaches, especially opposing coaches, talk about a player. If all of them keep saying it, they have no agenda and no reason to keep talking about a guy the way that they talk about Trayvon. It tells me that he's doing a lot of stuff on film, and trust me, coaches break down tape and they see who causes the havoc. Fans and media people as well, all they care about is numbers. All they care about is statistics. All they care about is pressures. No one really asked what a guy was supposed to be doing. Well, I happen to talk to coaches that used to be here. They absolutely love Trayvon Walker. They said he was one of the dudes you did not have to worry about at all on that team because he was always going to do everything right. The thing is with Trayvon is he has long arms and long legs. What I want to see them improve with him, and I think this is going to happen with Ryan Nielsen based on everything that I've heard about what type of coach he is. The one thing, if you really watch the Jaguars tape, and this might be a scheme thing, you notice Trayvon was always angled in towards the outside shoulder of whoever he was. He's like a beeline towards the quarterback. So if you're looking at the line of scrimmage as a straight line from the number 9 to the number 3 on the clock, right? And that line of scrimmage and players are lined up on the line. When you watch the great rushers, what they do is they line up on the outside shoulder or right on the right or left tackle. Their first 3 steps are up the field to get the offensive lineman off balance. And then there's the turn. That turn either is a long arm power to the shoulder, or depending on the balance, it's either the hump move, something to the hip. It's either a swim move, or it's kind of an over under where they dip and they get really low and they turn that corner. So Trayvon never really did that way because of the way the Jaguars had him lined up. And I think they had him lined up that way because sometimes he didn't even rush the passer because he wasn't even in a 3-point stance. And when he did stand up in a 3-point stance, he had a running start. And sometimes he would actually go backwards. Now, there are a lot of guys that fall back and do what they call the whole zone blitz thing where you're on the edge and then you drop back into coverage. But they do it sometimes. I think they did it too much in Jacksonville with that scheme. There's going to be an emphasis on coming forward this year, coming downhill. They're going to play that way up front because on the back end, they're going to play that same way. Keep everything in front of you, press them, come downhill. Even if you're in press bail, you're still going, everything's going to stay in front of you. Nothing easy, nothing over the top, right? So the only way that you affect the line of scrimmage up front enough to prevent anything from over the top is you got to be moving forward when you're down in the even fronts, or you just got to be moving forward with your best people. And I think Trayvon is better at doing something that they prevented him from doing a lot last year. So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how I believe it's going to be made easier for him. I don't think he's going to take it easy because he ain't built that way, and I'll discuss that a little bit too. But there's something about being humble, but then there's something about not being so humble that you're mild and meek. And I think he balances that out real well, and I think I know where he gets it from also. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about how things can get easier without him taking it easy. We'll do all of that here in just a second as we talk about Trayvon Walker as we head into training camp. We'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel, that's right. I love sports, man. I love them so much. I never want them to go, and I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel has it lets me know the sports going whenever I want to go. They're going to keep going no matter whether they're the ones you want or not. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, man, a boost or bonus daily right now. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. Now, it's not just a place for you to bet. This is a place for you to get information before you make the bet, and they have all the data that you need to make a very informed decision. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And don't forget, training camp starts pretty soon, so that preseason will be going as well. Take a look over at FanDuel. All right, second segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Talking about Trayvon Walker. I said these top three at the end of this year. I said he ain't going to be number 3. So who am I thinking that he's going to surpass? That ain't none of your business. I'm not here to talk about somebody else and what they may or may not do. And I don't think anybody in that top 3 or top 5 is going to take a step back. I think they're all going to take a step forward. But I think the leap that he is going to make, and that leap is probably going to appear bigger than it is, because I already think he's a really, really good player. But the things that fans and some media people watch for in sports, I think those things are going to come a little easier to him this year, even though he might just be playing just as well as he played in the past. But Ryan Nielsen, who he is, where he is, what he is, it seems like the guys that have been successful are yoked and are built and stand for the same types of things that Trayvon Walker stands for. Doing his job, no excuses, being in shape, always ready to go. You don't ever have to say sick him. If anything, you got to tell him, you got to pull him back. And that's what coaches always want. But he's mild and he's humble, but he's hungry. There's a quiet confidence about him. So normally when I meet and see people like that, I look right at the coach. And then I look at where he went to school. And then I look around him, and you're saying he got this from all of these groups of people. And then you meet somebody like his dad, and you go, oh, that's where he gets it from. Big man, quiet, sense of humor, strong, will tell you exactly what is on his mind, but he's as nice as he can be. I said the apple didn't fall from the tree. When I used to talk about Jalen Ramsey and everybody be like, oh, I hate him. I had the opportunity before I even met Jalen. I met his dad, Lamont, because of mutual acquaintances, and we talked for a couple of hours. We actually watched a preseason game sitting by each other with him and another person that was doing business. I think they still do business with Jalen Ramsey. I left there thinking I see where he gets it from. And what I'm talking about, I ain't talking about all the things that y'all think are all bad. I'm talking about that confidence, that look you in the eye confidence, that I'm going to tell you exactly what's on my mind. I hope it doesn't hurt your feelings, but if it does, oh, well, you'll be all right. That is Lamont Ramsey to a T. Shout out to him, too. He's a first responder up in Nashville. Love that. But Mr. Walker is also a former first responder and a Marine. And there's this quiet demeanor about him. And I said, you know what? That apple didn't fall from that tree. And shout out to Lasagna, to his mom, because if I don't, I'm sure, it's somebody goes, hey, man, you better give Mama Walker some credit. But I always look and pay attention to where certain mannerisms come from. Like I see my kids, man, and they act like me. And I'm thinking, well, one of them acts like me when I'm sober and the other one acts like me when I'm not. So that's a little bit scary. But the proposition that they both, I know where it comes from. And it helps you understand the player. This is why I know there's never going to be any fall off when it comes to him. This is why I know for a fact, you're not going to see him doing things outside of the character of his family, his football team, his community. You just will not see it happen. And when dudes don't have those type of distractions, they're able to really, really tap in on the thing that makes them great. And what makes them great is their desire and their will to even go above and beyond the X's and O's. And I think he's ready to do it. But I think a player like him needs a little nudge and a little help. And I'll tell you what that nudge is. It ain't about motivation. It ain't about all of this other stuff. What it is it's about somebody that understands him. And that's why I keep going back to those other players that played for Ryan Nielsen that had sort of the same body type, Trey Hendrickson, along with Cameron Jordan, that have that same blue collar, work hard mentality. And that's why I am so ecstatic about this being a perfect match from player to coach. I think Trayvon needed somebody that understands his skill set and understands how to open up and allow that skill set to flourish. One thing they did was they added other people like Eric Armstead, and they drafted Mason Smith, right? And they drafted Justin Jefferson. And they re-signed, of course, another guy who's in that top 3, Josh Allen. And then they're going to change this scheme and probably go a little bit more of an even front and leave Trayvon down in that mix. And I don't mean as a 3 technique, but I mean down in that mix close to the line of scrimmage where he can immediately whoop on whoever is in front of him. We already talked about offensive linemen, how they don't rotate offensive linemen in the league, how it's counterintuitive to even think about doing that. If you're rotating offensive linemen, that means something's wrong. Hopefully some of them need rotating this year, because I think for 50 snaps with a dude having to deal with Trayvon Walker for 30 snaps at least in passing situations, and he is immediately right in your face as soon as the ball snaps, not getting a running start, not coming from some weird angle, just all up in your business right now with new technique, with new ways to open up and unbottle that talent. And with the work that he's obviously put in the offseason at the pass rush camps with his own personal trainers. I already looked great. I wasn't able to make it out to a lot of the practices early because I was recovering from something. But how he looks now and the motivation that he now has, seeing what happened with Josh Allen and seeing how these pass rushers, and I don't think money was going to be the motivating factor for him, but it don't hurt. It does not hurt. I'm telling you, everybody can buy. Humble people buy stuff too, right? So that means just there's more you can do with the money. He runs a nice foundation up in his hometown in Georgia, in Thomaston. So I'm just thinking like a guy like that doesn't need all of the extra motivation. He just needs somebody that understands exactly who he is and what he is and exactly what he could be. And Ryan Nielsen has the communication skills to push him to another level. And I think that is exactly what is going to happen. I think it's the perfect storm of coaches. And I've used 2 examples of dudes who have that body type, because everybody wants that little sleek edge rusher that does spin moves all the time and flashes in front of the quarterback. And I'm not throwing shade at Aiden Hutchinson, but people that watch the game tell me that all he does is swim move all the time. But he's really, really good at it. But he has a high motor, and he's in a perfect situation. He fits. He played up in Michigan. He's from the area. He plays for Dan Campbell. They're the same type dude, all of that. But I think Trayvon is a perfect fit for Ryan Nielsen and what's going to happen here in Jacksonville. We're going to talk more about it in just a second. But when I start talking about perfect fits, you are a perfect fit for Locked On Sports Today, because if you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you got to turn down the volume with all of that shouting and screaming, you mute your TV and you still hear those jokers yelling, we'll make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. I'm going to tell you why the proof being in the pudding means so much in terms of credibility from what I believe players and what they think about Ryan Nielsen. I'm telling you, I'm blown away. And Cam Jordan was at that pass rush thing that they do with Von Miller. I hope he pulled Trayvon Walker aside. In fact, when training camp starts, I'll ask him and talk to him and see if he spoke to him a little bit. But we'll talk about more of the proof being in the pudding here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is also brought to you and sponsored by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. No do-overs necessary, man. LinkedIn will help you with all of that. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, and you can get it right the first time. It's not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl, all one word, to post your job for free. Work for me. I staffed a whole barbershop and a salon by using LinkedIn, and I did it in a very short period of time. Make sure you use Locked On NFL, linkedin.com/lockedonnfl, to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. Always thanking you for making us your first listen. Travon Walker and Ryan Nielsen, peanut butter and jelly, match made in heaven. You know what I mean? That thing, I'm trying to put something together here, but I think it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I talked about why I think things will be made a little bit easier. And you hear that quote by Cam Jordan when he basically said he teaches technique, he does all of these things, he gets you in the right spot, teaches you about how to stay in your run fits. I think what it does is give clarity, because sometimes a player, especially a young player, can be so in tune to wanting to do the right thing that maybe at times, maybe he doesn't naturally do some of the football things that will allow his ability to just flourish. It's like you don't have to think it through. So I'm going to use some numbers here. In 2011, as a rookie, Cam Jordan played 16 games. He had 1 sack. In 2012, as a second-year player, played 16 games. He had 8 sacks, had a bunch of tackles, had 65 tackles. Look what happened in 2013. 16 games, 12 and a half sacks. 14, 7 and a half. 2015, 10. 2016, 7 and a half. Now peek this from 2017 to 2021. 13, 12, 15 and a half, 7 and a half, 12 and a half. That's why he's going to the Hall of Fame. Those years that I mentioned, that's when Ryan Nielsen was the coach, when he had all those double digits. I think that's what took him from just being a really, really good player that's going to play a long time. I think those years with Ryan Nielsen put him into Canton when he ends up leaving. And plus, he won a Super Bowl championship. But in today's world, everything is microwave. Trayvon had 4.5 sacks, and then he had 10.5. That's 15 in 2 years. That's way more than Cam Jordan had in his first 2 years. In fact, it's almost more than he had in his 3 years. I'm sure after 3 years, Trayvon will still have more than Cam Jordan. And Cam Jordan is going to the Hall of Fame. There's just this rush for everything to happen fast now. But the proof is in the pudding, man. The proof is actually in the pudding. Sometimes it just takes guys a little bit longer, but those guys know other ways to affect the game. It took Jadeveon Clowney a little bit longer, but that's a little bit different, and I'll explain why. Because he never became a great sack artist. Nothing suggested that he would, other than his raw athleticism. His big play in college was a play where he wasn't even blocked. And then I think because he was the number one player in high school, everybody thought that meant that he was just going to be what Myles Garrett ended up being. Well, as it turns out, that doesn't happen that way. But Jadeveon Clowney has had a really, really nice career. And whether or not he lived up to being the number one guy and all of that, maybe what he didn't live up to were expectations that people had that were based on some things that kind of happened in their imagination a little bit. But he's had a really, really good, solid career. And he's another one of those dudes with these incredible physical talent tools. Get this. He's about 10 pounds smaller than Trayvon. And he's had injuries. Trayvon Walker's floor is Jadeveon Clowney. Trayvon Walker's ceiling is, in my opinion, I can't even put a lid on it or a label on it, because there's no telling that once he gets with a coach that understands exactly who he is and what he is, and then can have those players around him take up so much of this slack that a guy has to deal with him for 50 snaps one-on-one. And when you're a physical freak like that, that wears on people. He'll make that other dude bend before the guy makes him bend. There are going to be at least 2 plays made, whether it's a tackle for a loss and a sack or getting his hand on a strip or batting a ball down, that will change the games that the Jaguars are in. Trayvon Walker is an opportunity. And what I mean by that is this. He is an opportunity for somebody else to do something and make a play because of some stuff that he does on a regular basis. Now, what has to happen is the team has to win. Because as I said when he got drafted, if the team wins, people will be willing to be more patient with everything. When I said when he got drafted, winning makes folks not pay attention to statistics. I'll give you another example. Not winning makes folks not pay attention to statistics also. Here's why. Because Trayvon had a statistically good year last year, and you still got people that doubt this kid and think that last year was just, it was just, he benefited from other people. He did. What if I told you he missed about 6.5, 7 sacks because he was right there, or they called a penalty, a holding penalty, and the dude held him because the dude knew he was going to give up a sack? Those are things that make an impact on the game that stats don't talk about. So when he gets the numbers and he gets the stats, but the team doesn't make the playoffs and don't win a playoff game, somehow there's still people going, I need to see a little bit more. But when he had an impact and the team actually went to the playoffs and won a playoff game, there were actually less people who had something to say. The only reason they even criticized him then was because Aiden Hutchinson had a whole bunch of sacks, and everybody wanted to be right because a lot of people said that Jaguars should have taken Aiden Hutchinson. I'll tell you what, if you could ask them secretly, one-on-one, and told them you won't even release the information, I guarantee you, if you go over there and ask them right now, you can trade for Hutchinson right now, straight up, would you do it? I guarantee you it'd be a no. And it's not because they want to be right. Because remember, nobody would get the information. But I think that there's so much on tape that people who watch the games don't really see. Brian Baldy breaks it down better than anybody. And every chance he gets, he raves on Trayvon, and he raves on all of the little things that he does that makes things easier for other people. Now, I think he's going to get rewarded by doing those little things. Those little things are going to translate to him actually being the guy getting more credit for the plays that are being made. And I think that's going to be because of Ryan Nielsen, his ability to communicate, his ability to coach a certain way, his ability to have his position coaches. And that's the thing about coaching. It's not about whether those guys are trying to gel. It's about whether it's actually working and is it getting down to the players. I think that was one of the things last year. I think everybody was a good coach. I think they all tried hard, but I think getting them to be able to tap into the players during the game. And Doug Peterson talked about that, how we can't wait until we got to make adjustments now. We can't wait until we get to film study this week. And I understand, Doug, because by the time you adjust to that, there's something else, and you have to be able to do it on the fly. You have to fix it now. I think the ability to communicate and tie things together through all of those different levels and have an understanding, I think that's going to help them be able to make in-game adjustments. And when they make those in-game adjustments, it's going to lead to more wins, going to lead to bigger plays being made, and then it's going to be a situation where all the credit is going to be given to those who make those plays. And I think Trayvon Walker will be one of them this year. All right, man, as we get closer to training camp, it starts a week from today. We're going to be, if it started today, I probably wouldn't be there because it looked like it's going to storm outside. But if there are other things that you want me to watch out for, we did our last mailbag of the off season, but if there's other things you want me to watch out for, you can ask me always on social media. You never know. I might come up with a whole show based on the question and based on that interaction. So make sure you leave a comment, hit the like button if you're on YouTube, and also send me whatever questions you want, and we'll try to make sure we get them answered, whether it be in show form or in me just responding to you. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. It's something about that statement. It said, it's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts. I'm going to tell you right now, I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I know a bunch about the other teams around the league, but I will tell you this. I don't know as much about those teams as the Locked On host that's covering those teams. So I would venture to say that it's not arrogant of me to say that there ain't nobody that knows more than me, but I do it from my perspective, the blessing of Locked On, and they know how I roll. That's why you need to check out local, man. Check me out or whoever, but get your local information. Get it from the local people. Now that I've done my PSA, it's time for me to say goodbye. Not forever, but just for today. We'll see you tomorrow with another great edition of Locked On Jaguars. You guys take care.